Welcome to our review of P&O's Iona. We travelled on board in May 2025, visiting the Norwegian fjords. It was our first time on board any P&O ship. But first, we'd like to introduce ourselves. We are Dan and James. As per our channel name, we are completely cruising obsessed. We've been lucky enough to try 7 different cruise lines over the last couple of years. It's definitely our favourite way to holiday, with the chance to relax and unwind, try lots of different foods. We love getting dressed up for formal nights, but also let our hair down and have a bit of a party. Let's talk embarkation day, our very first glimpse into our P&O experience. We had already read online that P&O very strictly enforce embarkation times. As such, we only arrived 5 minutes before we were due. We were surprised to see very large volumes of people being made to queue outside of the terminal building, with different time slots for each queue. It felt a little bit chaotic, but certainly not the worst we'd seen. All staff that we'd met seemed quite stressed, and we were directed to a check-in counter up the escalators. Not the warmest of welcomes at the check-in counter. We were then directed to wait in another seated queue with very minimal communication. We weren't really sure why we were waiting much longer. However, not long after being on board, our room was very quickly ready, with luggage promptly arriving thereafter. Something that really allows us then to switch off, relax and start our holiday. The ship overall feels really well designed. The main atrium brings in loads of natural light and gives you a fantastic view to everything that's going on around you, particularly while sailing, which was great for us at the Norwegian fjords. To sit and have coffee or wine and take in the view was wonderful. The ship decor feels really classy, really beautifully put together. Lots of muted colours, lots of metal, lots of whites and greys and creams. We love how outdoorsy the ship is, with a full wraparound promenade and lots of water areas including hot tubs and pools, which for a British cruise line typically sailing out of Britain can be unusual. I've not used the stairs as much on any other cruise as we did on the Iona. Queues at lifts were, I have to say, quite unbearable. The layout of the ship, however, overall, really easy to navigate. Most public areas are really well grouped together. It's very easy to make your way from one end of the ship to the other without the real need to cut through venues or go up and down stairs to make your way from one side to the other. We're not typically shoppers when cruising. However, I will say the Iona's selection was brilliant. It was really fairly priced, and actually they stocked items you probably would want to buy. So I would recommend a look around the stores, especially on a sea day. Having free-to-use laundry and ironing stations on every deck we thought was invaluable. A really nice touch, particularly for formal nights. The onboard portal, which of course is free to use, we actually really liked. We were a bit nervous when we found out it wasn't an app and you had to use this in your phone's browser. However, making bookings, amending reservations, looking at queues for restaurants, we actually thought was really simple and easy to use, and would actually highly recommend even for those that aren't too tech savvy. We love to try a variety of entertainment when on a cruise. We did try a couple of the shows in the Headliners Theatre. The sound and staging was amazing. The story and performance overall, not so great. 2 shows we had booked were sadly cancelled, one of them being the Take That musical, which I have to say was really sad. We didn't use the cinema on board, but we were really impressed by the selection and love that this is free. We did catch some live music in the 710 Club. Really nice 45-minute set, perfect to dip in and out. We caught some late night comedy in the Limelight Club. It was incredibly funny and the atmosphere was fantastic, just like a comedy bar. We were probably most let down by the shows in the Sky Dome. In theory, everything looks great, lasers, trapeze, acrobatics, but it did feel really flat. Something didn't quite work for us there. For entertainment overall, we felt quite let down. The things we were most excited for, the shows in the Sky Dome, not so great. The Take That musical, which sadly was cancelled, and although this can't be helped, I therefore can't give you an opinion. So for the entertainment on the Iona, we would give this 2 stars out of 5. As mentioned in our introduction, we do sometimes like a bit of a party, We certainly like to try lots of cocktails, something that's quite important to us when we're on holiday because it's not something we would always do at home. As such, we did purchase the deluxe drinks package prior to sailing. For those that don't know, that gives you 15 drinks a day, which is the same as the classic drinks package. However, this does give you double measures of 50 millilitres and large glasses of wine at 250 millilitres. So in theory, you could end up, if you maxed every day, having double the drinks you can compared to the classic drinks package. So to us, that felt really worth it. A few things to caveat that with. The menus are really well labelled. It shows you what you can and can't have as part of your package. There is still a fairly large selection of drinks that aren't included in the deluxe drinks package. Compared to other cruise lines, this did surprise us. What surprised us further was you couldn't just pay a difference or, pay a contribution to a drink not included. Actually, you had to buy that drink entirely from scratch. Our package did give us a 20% discount, but really frustrating and disappointing when there's a variety of wines and perhaps some cocktails that aren't included in this package. It just feels a bit stingy when you've spent all that money, firstly on a cruise, and then a deluxe drinks package, to not at least be able to pay the difference on certain drinks. The other thing I will say, as I've mentioned, we love to try different cocktails. On the whole, the bar menus are pretty much the same in most venues, with a few exceptions here and there. So actually it's a bit difficult to explore new things in new venues, because on the whole it was very much the same. Let's talk about one of our favourite parts of cruising, the food. We thoroughly enjoy the opportunity to try lots of new dishes in a variety of restaurants, including specialty dining and main dining, as well as casual eateries. We do our very best to move our way from restaurant to restaurant, trying lots of different dishes, and we're quite happy to spend a little bit extra on specialty dining to get the best from our experience. On paper, Iona has some fantastic specialty dining restaurants. From the Epicurean, which offers fine dining, to Sindhu, which is now a P&O classic, offering contemporary Indian dining, but also a large selection of included dining. From the Keys with grab-and-go quick bites, a substantial buffet, and 4 main dining restaurants. So let's talk first main dining. First of all, the actual restaurants are beautiful. The largest main dining restaurant at the back of the ship offers fantastic views. We were surprised, I have to say. The food in here was excellent. As main dining goes on cruise ships, it can be really hit and miss, but every meal, be lunch or dinner, that we had in the main dining on Iona was fantastic. Let's talk now about the Olive Grove. This is another included restaurant, Mediterranean themed, with lots of pastas and salads. We're really excited to try here, and we're quite happy to pay up charges on things we fancied. I have to say, unfortunately, a huge disappointment for us. The service wasn't great, the quality of food was very poor, and we actually left this restaurant without finishing our meal. We have heard great things. We may have got unlucky on the day, but not one for us. We also really enjoyed the Keys. We had both fish and chips and burgers in this area. Really quick service, typically always easy to grab food, but also loads of easily accessible outdoor areas if you wanted to sit on deck. We also really enjoyed the buffet. The quality was always very good. Not the largest selection of buffets as ships go. However, we could always grab a table. There was always space indoors and outdoors. And there was always typically a carvery at lunch and dinner, which we think is a really nice touch. So the place we went to on our first evening was the Beach House. Now this is at the end of the buffet and is a sort of restaurant in restaurant style. It's really well decorated. Just a £9 charge per person at the time of booking. It sells itself as a Caribbean, sort of South American style cuisine with nachos and steaks and a few fish dishes. There are some upcharge on some items, particularly the sharer dishes and some of the more premium meats. For us, this was 10 out of 10. Fantastic experience, and actually our only regret is not getting a chance to go back. We also thoroughly enjoyed the Glass House, which is the wine bar come tapas restaurant that's open to the atrium. Really reasonably priced, fantastic small plates, really quick to get served, and a slightly elevated wine list, which was actually included, which was great. We only went to Keen and Cowler once, and it was actually for breakfast one morning on board. For just £3.50, we enjoyed a full fry-up with fantastic quality meats, fantastically cooked eggs, and brilliant service. We'd highly recommend Keel & Cow as an alternative breakfast for a slightly relaxed environment. We've also heard great things about the steaks here of an evening. We went to the Epicurean 3 times, for afternoon tea, Norwegian tasting menu, and for one final dinner. To say this venue was hit and miss is an understatement. We had some of our very best dishes, but also some of our very worst dishes whilst on board. P&O's now famous Sindhu was another restaurant we were really excited to try. We're both big fans of Indian cuisine, and this restaurant appears on all of P&O's ships, so in theory it should be great. It's probably the worst service we received on board, and the food was average at best. Overall, I would say it's quite clear our dining experience on board was very hit and miss. We had some great dishes and some good service. We had some really poor dishes and some really poor service. Now, I know that's luck of the draw, but on other cruise lines there is an element of consistency, particularly around specialty dining, where you are paying additional for food that you in theory have already paid for. Expecting that elevated service and elevated cuisine, I don't think is unreasonable. For this reason, dining for us would be a 3 out of 5. We feel as if we've maybe missed P&O's heyday, and actually now budgets have become more of a priority within most restaurants on board. Let's talk about spas, hot tubs and pools, areas we will enjoy on any cruise, any time of year. The main spa area is comparable to some of the nicest spas we've been in on other cruise lines. Fantastic hydrotherapy pool, a variety of steam rooms and saunas, and the hot scented showers, which is a particular favourite of mine. What we will say is any hot tubs and hydrotherapy pools are on a timer. They come on for approximately a minute, and they are then off again for approximately 3 to 4 minutes. This is incredibly frustrating, particularly if you end up in a pool or hot tub with strangers. It does then feel like you're just sat in a bath, on deck, or in the spa. That being said, the number of hot tubs we were really impressed with. We quite often found ourselves just alone relaxing without the company of anyone else, which is always a bit of a treat. We typically would always buy a week's thermal pass. On the Iona at the time of sailing, it was £159 each. However, we also inquired about the cost of a massage. If you have the thermal pass for a week, there are quite often very good promotions where you can pay an additional fee and include a massage whilst you're on board. So we'd highly recommend talking to the spa team about this, because in the end we walked away feeling like we had very good value for money. The pools and hot tubs on deck aren't the warmest we've been in. However, we were sailing in May in the Norwegian fjords and we were perfectly comfortable. That being said, we are British, so we will force ourselves to enjoy a pool even if temperatures are milder. I'm fairly sure we saw people sunbathing in the middle of the fjords, which I have to say was quite impressive. So what was our overall spa, hot tub and pool experience? Well, generally the volume of hot tubs and the accessibility was brilliant. Quite often found ourselves enjoying these areas alone. The spa area was great with a good variety of facilities, including steam rooms and saunas. For us, the improvements that could be made would be perhaps slightly warmer temperatures in some of the hot tubs and pools, and to really adjust those timers. Either extend the timers, or a push to operate button would be great, so at least hot tubs wouldn't be on at all when there's no one in them and people can enjoy them when they are. So we would give the spa and hot tub pool experience a 4 out of 5. So let's summarise what we thought of the Iona overall. As we mentioned at the very beginning, it was our first ever P&O cruise, and I think that was really important. We have sailed on multiple cruise lines over the last couple of years, and as you can see, we are quite obsessed with cruising. It is our favourite way to holiday. And I think a really important thing to note, it doesn't take much to sell us on a product or a ship, an itinerary or a brand. We typically will find the good in most things and get the excitement out of most things. And it doesn't take much for either of us to convince the other to book another cruise. So would we sail on P&O again? Well, if you were to ask us both immediately now, the answer is probably no. We're not sure it's the brand for us. There's certainly a budget element to sailing on P&O that really was quite apparent. We have sailed on other cruise lines that most people would perceive and describe as budget, and we feel we have a far elevated experience. And that really is across the board, or whether it be drinks packages, specialty dining, spa, service, or the initial embarkation. The experience is a world apart to what we're used to. As we've mentioned and heavily discussed, there's no denying the ship is beautiful. It's really well decorated, it's really easy to navigate, and that does make a world of difference when on board. The itineraries are always really interesting. Not to have to fly at the start and the end of a holiday is a huge draw for us. We would always choose typically to cruise from Southampton or a UK port if possible. That being said, there really is just something missing on board for us. In service, in atmosphere, in quality, and actually, as such, it's probably not the cruise line for us. We're definitely tempted and we will travel on the Aurora at some point in the future. Again, having done our research through blogs and vloggers, it seems like a very different P&O experience and something we're really excited to try, given the age of the ship and the nature of being an adult-only cruise. We had a fantastic holiday. We would highly recommend the Norwegian fjords as an itinerary. It was absolutely breathtaking and a huge bucket list item for us. Our overall experience of the P&O's Iona, based on experience and value for money, would be 3 stars out of 5. We hope you've enjoyed our review of our time on P&O's Iona. If you haven't seen already, we've already uploaded a full ship tour and a full cabin tour. The cabin's a really interesting one if you're considering booking in the future. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We're due to travel next on Celebrities Apex in August of this year, so look out for future videos if cruising's your thing.